Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Mindful Investor podcast show. My name is Steve Rozenberg, and I'm the Vice President of Investor Education here at Mind. And I'm joined with my co-host and very good friend, Alex Osenenko. How you doing today, Alex?
Hey, Steve, I'm doing great. This is, I think, our first episode given the current situation with COVID-19 and what the world is going through is incredible. But we also wanted to sort of ground ourselves in reality. And I think we talk about a lot of different things on this show. Today, we have a special guest who is going to help us really just look at how Mind is responding to this crisis and hopefully help folks who are listening, if you own a property, even if you're a resident or if you own a property management company. Like what we want to do today is unpack some of the ways Mind is responding to the crisis. And hopefully that will be helpful, right, Steve? That's the theme?
Yeah, and I think it's important for people to understand, as everyone knows, this is a very fast-changing environment and situation, and it's ever-reaching. So this is not just something that may be reaching your immediate area. This is obviously a worldwide situation, and it is changing, and we are just trying to give you as much factual information as we can. We're also trying to make sure that you are operating from a business perspective, if you own a business or you have rental properties or whatever the situation is, but we'd like to at least share how we at Mind are doing things and how we are taking the look at this from a different perspective. And hopefully this will help you in what you do and maybe give you some insight as to how we at Mind are handling this situation and what we're doing as well. Alex,
let's introduce. Sorry, Steve. Break. I want to introduce our guest, who's the world right now is on his shoulders, so he's a little hunched over. He's the president of the company as well as chief operating officer. Ali Nazar, welcome to the show.
Hey guys, what's up? How's it going? I don't feel too hunched over. I feel pretty straight right now.
Good. Steve, go ahead. I broke your train of thought.
No, I think it's important that we're all in this together. This is new for everyone. So this is uncharted territories. Now, with that being said, there have been other disasters and there have been other things going on, emergencies in our lives that we've all dealt with at some cyclical point in real estate or in business. This obviously is unprecedented times with quarantines and self-isolations. And so the reason we wanted Ali on, especially for the first episode, as well as maybe you can talk on the situation room that we've created at Mind. I just think it's important for people to understand what Ali's going through and how he's handling it, because he's got many, many facets in different regions, different types of clients that we have to deal with, employees. It's a myriad of things that, a very large circus that he has to kind of control, I guess you could say. So I'd like to, maybe Alex, first, maybe you can talk about what we've done creating the situation room and what that entails for people to understand and the value of it.
Yeah, so the situation room concept is essentially a place where we hope to take the torrent of information, the raging river of information that is just flowing from everywhere, and sort of narrow it down to a manageable stream for the rental housing community, whether you are a resident, whether you're a property owner, whether you are aspiring property owner, whether you own a property management company, you service rentals, we want to be off service. So with that, I want to say, Ali, what are your, we're dealing with this situation at Mind. It's coming rapidly. And I think, Steve, you put it on Ali's shoulder, but we also have an incredible team. I mean, Ali, wouldn't you agree?
Sure. Yeah, the best in the business.
I think so too. So what's some of the best practices we've deployed for, let's start with first constituency, our team, our employees.
Sure. Well, I mean, at the first, thanks for you guys kind of setting up and pivoting a little bit of our content strategy to focus on being of service to the community at large. This is a unprecedented event, and we all are in this together, all of society. So we've got to all pitch in. And for listeners out there, just want to give any, kind of shout outs to people who are struggling with this economic toll or health toll, even more importantly. And I know in my family, we have medical people, and they really have become warriors through this crisis, which has kind of turned into a war in some ways. And we're sitting here on March 20th. Last night, the state of California, the governor said, the whole state's on lockdown and we're bringing in hospital ships to take care of people, reclaiming dormitories to create more hospitals. So this is a crisis we've never seen before. And I really want to just give a shout out to the medical folks. If there's anybody listening, thank you for your service, and we'll continue to do everything we can to be a good actor in this crisis. And that's really, I think, where we come from overall as a company. We have core values. We're going to stay true to those core values. Being mindful is one of them, and that's about being a good actor in society. We believe our business is something that is a societal need. It's like we call it, it's at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy. That shelter it's a basic human need. And when the Bay Area went into lockdown earlier this week, they listed the list of essential services that were allowed to continue operating, and businesses that dealt with shelter were one of those essential services. So we kind of wear that as a badge of pride during this crisis. We're going to do our part to keep society moving forward and keep people hopefully safe by managing well. So, that's, I think, the place we're coming from. And for the first constituency, our employees, which are, the biggest key to our success. A couple things were, first off, we have another one of our core values is making remote work. And we're a virtual based company. We have people all over the world that works for this company, and it's kind of part of the founding core values of Mynd. So it's been very easy for us to shift to a virtual model, and we have made it, all of our employees now are working from home who can work from home. And we're very thankful that we can do that, and our productivity levels actually might even go up because now people aren't commuting, and they're able to focus a little bit more on work. Now, that being said, people have their kids at home, and that's a whole other challenge that all of society is dealing with right now. So, but we pride ourselves in being a 21st century style business, and we have virtual. We have a way to let people work virtually that works. And I think just for people who are wondering, how do you do that? And we've been building our company that way. The most important tip I can give you is that if people are working virtually, you need to have some kind of visibility on productivity. So that usually comes down to like KPIs. So what's the number you're looking at? So for example, if you got a member of your team that handles service requests, then how many service requests are they touching a day, or how many are they resolving a day, that kind of stuff. If you can have visibility on what they're doing, then it really doesn't matter where they are. And we've kind of set that up from the beginning of our company. So we have most of the departments, especially the property management portions of the business, are very, very KPI driven. And so we have a good idea of productivity level, so we can shift remotely quickly, which we did. The other piece of our business is the field work, which is very, very important to the flow of property management operations. You have to be able to show units. You have to be able to inspect units. You have to be able to fix certain emergency issues in occupied units. And that's probably the stickiest issue that's come up in the COVID-19 crisis is how do you deal with an occupied unit that you have to enter? And I think the first thing we've done there is to reduce those needs. So we've got, we're, for example, on renewal inspections, so like a tenant mid-occupancy inspection, we're waiving those right now. We're just not going to do them. In California, there's pre-move out inspections that are required. We're going to do those virtually. So we're going to try to find ways where we don't have to expose our employees or the residents to unnecessary contact. But when there are things that have to happen, for example, there is a health or habitability issue in a unit that we have to go fix, and we're sending our guys. So we've given them cards where they can show kind of, here's our rules of engagement. We're asking for the resident to stay in a different room while we fix something to enforce social contacting, or social distancing. And obviously we've outfitted our teams with whatever materials we can get to help them be hygienic and clean and train them. So they have booties, they have plastic gloves, and then hand sanitizer, which is, the $1 million question right now for everybody, like, how do you get hand sanitizer? So we have all of our offices on the outlook for hand sanitizer. People are going to the stores early in the morning to get some. For our field guys, we've also been experimenting with making hand sanitizer. I'm sure everybody's kind of looked into that as well, but I think, if you've got a big pump of aloe vera and you put in some alcohol, you can kind of approximate it. So there's all sorts of things you can do. But so for our office staff, they've been virtualized. For our field teams, minimize the interactions they have to do, but let's keep operations moving and then get them outfitted and trained so that they can stay safe.
Ali,
Yeah,
I've got a question. I'm sorry, Alex. I've got a question. I think that a lot of people could gain from this is, now this is not your first time running a large business, and this may be the first time that you've dealt with something like this. My question for people that may be watching, what is the biggest lesson you've learned that maybe you had not thought of prior to something like this, and now maybe you put in your manual saying, you know what, this may be once in a lifetime, it may be twice in a lifetime, but this is something that needs to be in an operating manual of any business that you didn't even see coming?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. I think probably something that I left out, and from a strategic perspective of like how we're approaching it, is in a crisis situation, which there's all sorts of different types of crisis situation. I think what makes this one particularly unique is the whole world is affected. But certainly companies go through crisis situations all the time. So this is like a, high threat level. And a lot of it comes down to communication. I think you've got to be able to kind of make sure you've engaged the right pieces of your organization if you've got, a bigger company, and get them all in the room on a consistent basis, sharing the same information so that then decisions can be made and then communicated to all the constituencies that need to hear it. So that, I think, is one of the most important things that I'm learning through this, because this business, I have led other businesses, but property management, especially what mine's trying to do, is pretty complicated. You've got lots of different departments. We also have a whole technology team. We have a big, administrative staff. So there's a lot of different constituencies that have different kind of like angles where they're affected by this crisis. So we've got to engage all those different people, pieces of the business, and make sure that we make the right decisions based on the right information, and clearly communicate. I think what you don't want to have happen is panic. Sure. So, we've been trying to really communicate clearly, put an FAQ up internally, and we've been consistently communicating. Our CEO, Doug Bryan, is sending daily messages to the team, giving them tips on how to get through this difficult period. So I think a lot of it also is showing compassion and, making sure that people understand that we're there for them too.
So one piece, looking beyond this a little bit, Ali and Steve too, looking beyond this, I think the nature of work, our company values be entrepreneurial. And so my mind always kind of shifts there when there's a threat, like we deal with what immediately in front of us, but then we also evaluate for opportunity. And I think the nature of work will shift after this. Now access to talent, I think, will be expanded because we may be able to make remote work. Well, in the future, I think people will just have to make remote work, and that's going to be an interesting shift. Even though we think we're fully instrumented, I don't think we are. We can be better. For example, the one thing Ali, we are working on right now, is team engagement. We're trying interesting new things. We're doing virtual happy hours, but we don't really have a playbook for that, have we? Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I think everybody in the world is trying to figure this stuff out. I mean, I was just watching some of the late night comedy shows last night, and they're all being done via Zooms now. And
yeah,
the host is at home talking to the guest who's at home. We're all trying this. So I think, is physical interaction overrated? Are we going to think that after this? I mean, I think there has been a truism where picking up, it's hard to get communications done over the phone or over Slack or email, excuse me, because I think often you pick up on the physical cue, you miss on the physical cues that are a big part of the story. But will we feel now that Zooms or Google Hangouts or whatever you use can give you that? It's an interesting question. I think we're going to really push the envelope for sure now.
I think, Alex, you bring up a good point on that. And a lot of businesses in the 2008 recession, myself being from the airline industry, a lot of people thought that this was going to tank the airline industry because everybody started going to the virtual meeting world. The challenge with that, though, in my experience, is that people like the human interaction. And, if you look at communication, 55% is body language, 30% is tonality, and about 7% or so, give or take, is the words you use. So a lot of that you pick. Now, you can't pick all that up on a two-dimensional screen. And I think that humans are intentionally made to interact. And I think that while it may be a cycle and it is a good go-to, I don't know that it would replace human interaction, because again, this very conversation after 2008, when all the airlines, all the bookings dropped off, and they thought that everybody was going to go virtual now because it worked, it was cheaper. It eventually, within about 6 to 9 months, it went back to business as usual because people just like that. I guess, Ali, my question to you is, how do you balance, if I owned a business and I'm dealing with, there's a huge emotional side, not only with your clients, but with your employees. But by the same token, as running a business, there is an operational side that needs to keep going. And how does somebody toe that line of keeping that balance of saying, I'm going to keep operating, but I'm still going to be empathetic to what's going on, both to our clients, and as a property management company, we have two clients. We have the owners and we have our residents, and, you know, financially being able to do what you have to do. How does somebody balance that, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think we started with our team. Like, they're the most important thing to us, and we want to make sure that they're safe and secure and understand how Mind's reacting to the crisis and how they can participate in that. So you start there, and then you look at, okay, how do I protect my business? Because if I don't have a business, I can't keep my team safe. So
right.
Like, kind of the first, like, if you go down that order of operations, you look at your owners and understand, okay, how are we going to communicate with our owners and make sure that they understand that we're thinking through this thoughtfully, responsibly. And, you know, in general, we all know as property managers, there is a little bit of there's two sides of the equation. There's the owner side and the resident side. And, you know, quite often when we're enforcing, you know, delinquency, we're trying to collect money, we evicting people, you know, you're the agent of the owner to get, you know, their interests protected. So, you know, it's an interesting balance, because sometimes you might have the most heartbreaking story on a resident side, but you have to do the right thing for the owner and execute. So yeah. I think right now there's a little bit of, you know, we don't know what's going to happen with so many people losing their jobs right now. Like, you know, millions and millions of people can't work right now because the restaurants are closed. Right. So that's going to directly impact the rental payments that are about to come in April. We don't know how big an impact that is, but we're all assuming it's going to be huge. So I think the first step is to look at our owners, understand maybe how can we be of service to them during this crisis and help them in a piece of their life that is going to be part of the complications for them. So we're the agent for them managing their property. So I think where we went first was, okay, let's communicate to them what changes we're making to our operation to keep ourselves and our residents safe so that they have comfort that we're being a good actor here. And then let's talk about how can we engage them in a way to navigate this crisis in a way that's kind of, you know, protects their interests, but also has, I think, a stepped up level of compassion for all of the residents and all the renters who are going to be in these really difficult, positions to not be able to pay rent. So what we've done is we've sent out multiple communications to our owners, but the biggest one was around how we're going to handle rent collection. And this is where we kind of have the meeting of, you know, compassion plus, you know, trying to execute the business. Because, you know, it's not like if someone can't pay rent, it's just some rich owner on the other side. It's like, oh, well, I didn't need that money. Like, a lot of those people need that money, that they rely on that money to pay their mortgage or live their lives. So what we come to is kind of a multi-part strategy on how we're going to do rent collection over the next couple of months. So one part of it is we're going to be very compassionate and take it on a case-by-case basis with our residents. So if a resident can't pay, and it's because of the COVID-19 crisis, then we'll take them through kind of a decision tree that can lead them to multiple places. One would be a payment plan, so that we can get them to defer some of the rent to later, but we'll still be able to collect it at a later time, but we can spread it out. Another thing is we will come to the owner and ask the owner if they want to provide some rent relief for that resident. When we sent this out, we sent this notification to all of our owners. We have, I think, around 6,000 owners in our portfolio. We sent it to all of them a couple of days ago, like, here's our plan, and we might come to you. We get overwhelming response back from our owners saying, yes, like, we're totally down to give discounts. we actually have had some owners proactively say, yeah, just cut the rent in half for the next 2 months. So I think, this is a moment in time that is very unique, and everybody's on the same boat or in the same side. And I think people are feeling that, and this is a way that people can help. So there's an overwhelming response there. And then I think the third part is Mind is going to be making contributions to resident relief funds. There's places that we can provide to our residents who can't pay, where they can go get relief. Now, there's a lot of government programs that'll be coming out, and that's part of what our Situation Room will be doing online. We'll be cataloging all those opportunities for people to take advantage of things that are coming out in response to this crisis from a government perspective. But we also are going to make a nonprofit donation to be able to build our own fund to be able to help residents with as well. So between all those three different things, deferred payment plans, owner resident relief or owner rent relief, and our own different links that we can send to our residents to go get assistance. That's, I think, the number one thing we need to do is find a path forward where we can find rent to get rent collected, but do it in a compassionate way, in a way that makes sense. Just like, for example, today was official. I think that taxes won't be due till July 15th. So a lot of this is like, we can just defer stuff, and that's the right thing to do.
And it's an ever changing, it's like you just said, today they came out with something and it's ever changing. And, you brought up some good points that I think people need to really think about is, especially if you are in the real estate business, especially the property management businesses, the fiduciary responsibility is to the owner. However, if you remove the resident, you're really not doing the owner any good. So by having a hard line and not trying to have that compassion, are you really doing the right thing for the owner by showing compassion? And I would say probably not. But you brought up something that a lot of people have the misconception that real estate owners have this gold mine of money. I remember here in Houston, I went through a hurricane, I think it was Hurricane Ike. I lost 50% of my roofs on my rental portfolio. And I distinctly remember driving these properties with my business partner, and I'm thinking, wow, what are all these families going to do? Like, we have, 30, 40 families that are going to be displaced now, and they don't have roofs over the head. And then within a second, it clicked in my head, wait a second. If they can't live here, they can't pay rent. If they can't pay rent, how am I going to pay my mortgages? If I can't pay my mortgages, how am I going to keep these properties? So there is a trickling effect that you don't realize if you don't own properties, and on the massive scale that, you've got to look at a much bigger picture. And I think that, at least for investors, my example would be, this is when proper pre-planning comes into play, because unfortunately, I think we all agree and know there will be some people that lose businesses. There will be some people that lose real estate, maybe because they weren't planning correctly and they didn't have proper reserves, whatever the reason is. And I think that's why it's important for, this conversation, for people to understand that there is a way to do this at a minimum scale, because especially in this environment, it is changing ever fast. But I guess I've just got another question, because I'm so inquisitive on this. How does somebody not overreact? How do you not go full tilt the other way and do something maybe and that is detrimental to your business or to your properties or to yourself or to your employees?
Can I take a stab, just a quick stab
Sure.
at this one? I think and Ali, I'll turn it over to you, but it's the DNA, it's the core values. I think it goes back to the initial instrumentation of the business through the vision and core values. And I think I want to turn it to Ali, but to me, this is so foundational that every time in doubt, you just go look, you pull it out of your memory, and what's the right behavior.
I think that's true. I think also what's really important is having a great team and trusted advisors. So I think if you sit there saying, I'm going to figure all this out and I'm the smartest person, I think, especially in this business and property management, there's just a lot of different views and constituencies. So, I'm very blessed to have an awesome team full of smart people. And so in thorny situations where it's like, okay, how do we thread the needle of doing right by society and our employees and our residents and our owners who all maybe have different interests here, which is kind of always the nature of property management. I like to have really heated discussions with the team and create an environment where people feel safe and they can speak their truth for whatever constituency they're representing. And then, but they're bought in, so that speak the truth, and then we're going to make our decision. We're going to go, but they know that they were heard and they advocated for whatever piece of the business they're responsible for. Now, I will say this is an emergency situation and a societal crisis. So I think we should swing a lot more into compassionate mode right now. Some things are more important than money, in my opinion, and we'll be rewarded for doing the right thing later. I've always believed that you should always do the right thing, and then good things will come to you. So like I said, we send an email to our owners. You do want to walk a balance. We probably wouldn't go so far as to send an email to all of our residents, say, if you can't pay, we'll do this for you. But because there are people who try to take advantage. But certainly we sent the email to our owners. They were totally down to help. We're going to research every program possible out there for our residents because we have some resources. That's something we can do. It's just going and finding the information that can help people. And so we'll throw everything we can into this to help residents. But we certainly are going to protect our owners. And that's why we started. If you think about employees first, so we talked about owners, like what are we doing for owners? We're giving the owners the ability to participate in the decisioning happening here around how things are going to go down from a rent collection perspective. And then we're trying to share information with them. I mean, this is, I'm sure, a scary time for many owners too. It's like, well, I can't evict someone. What if they don't pay me rent for a year? Like, how am I going to handle that? And, I would think that there's talk about a national eviction ban. There's also talk about a national foreclosure ban. So like, I think there's two sides of this coin that will be, thought through hopefully by the government. And this is an unprecedented situation that I think, there'll be lots of ways that we can mitigate the kind of losses that people might find. And maybe it's just a big pause button on society for a little while. Then we start it up again after the crisis is over.
Yeah. And Alex, I think you said something that I think it was very eloquent the way you said it, about the core values and the culture of your company. And I always think of the term, in the military, it's, you practice on you sweat on the practice field so you don't bleed on the battlefield. And what that means, it's the same thing in flying airplanes. You're practicing for emergencies all the time, and you have emergency manuals. And this may be a lesson to a lot of people that if you do not have an emergency manual, if you do not have a standard operating procedure, an SOP of what to do, maybe not this specific emergency or disaster, but you should have some form of disaster manual of being able to have the protocol for your team members to work remotely. And what does that mean? And again, I'm sure everybody probably could dust off a manual and say, you know what, maybe this is time to revise it because technology has changed, allowing us to do this kind of stuff, having voice over IP phones and all that stuff that probably needs to revise and revisit so that you have that muscle memory, at least at some level, so that the first time it happens, it's not your first look at an emergency going, I have no idea what to do. And, the things that Ali mentioned, I think is, as far as like the protocols of the government instituting and being able to have the resources, that's all team doing that. And I think that goes back to the core values and the culture of the company to be able to have that team and the resources to be able to stop, take a breath, assess the situation, breathe, and then say, okay, what's the problem? Now let's go to solutions. And I think that's what's, to me, and Ali, I don't know what your thoughts are on this, and if you've ever thought of having an emergency like this, of this size and scale, but I'm sure we're all thinking ahead of going, probably need to have something in place for at least an infrastructure.
Yeah, it's interesting. You come from the airline industry, which is all about manuals and protocols. Safety is paramount. I come from the startup industry, and we really don't care about safety.
We break things.
Yeah. So like the way that our culture works is it's about taking in new information all the time and adjusting. Like that is the foundational part of leading a startup, in my opinion. So you have a thesis, like this is what we're going to try to do based on X, Y, Z. I'm going to go for it. And you start to execute, and then new information comes in. And like, that's why great CEOs are asking lots of questions all the time. They're trying to understand the information. And then you might have to change decisions you made in the past based on new information. So this is kind of how I think about this process we're in is, okay, new set of criteria. The new information is coming in all the time, actually. So that's plays a strength of ours as being an entrepreneurial organization. Let's synthesize that quickly. Let's put the right people in the room. Let's make decisions and go. And I've been happy about how we've executed. Also, NARPM came out with a bunch of their guidelines about how to deal with the COVID-19 crisis, and we were pretty much in line with what they were talking about already. We'd already kind of moved. So I think it's, people are thinking about this in a similar way, and you just have to, put the right people together, like I said, and communicate clearly and execute. One more thing we didn't talk about on the owner side is I think there is a really big question about leasing velocity right now. Like we're going into the big leasing season, but what's going to happen? Are people going to be able to freely move around and look at units? Now we do self-showings. A big part of our business is self-showings, which is very well set up for this current crisis. But then, if you have a lot of people coming in and out of a space, that immediately there's a hygiene problem there. And, hygiene has to be paramount, especially as a business. We want to make sure that everything's clean. So there's going to be questions about how we're going to step up our professional cleanings of any vacant units, and we're going to continue to operate. But we are expecting that there will be a drop-off in leasing volume, just as people hunker down, stay put, and that's a threat for their owners' income as well. So that also flows through to our renewal strategy. We're shifting, most property management companies have different renewal postures based on what kind of rental market they're in. So if you're in a down rental market, you kind of want to try to keep people in the home. If you're in an up rental market, maybe you're being super aggressive on your renewal strategies. And if they move out, fine, you'll go get another one. Right now, our advice to our owners and the way we're going to pivot is just to try keep people, not be aggressive in price hikes, keep people in their homes. Let's all wait this out and kind of try to optimize for our owners' sake for occupancy. Let's just keep people in homes.
Sure.
And live to fight another day.
Right.
Very well said. Let's talk about the other side of the equation, our very important constituents on the resident side. We've done, we've done a lot of communications. We've done a lot of work. There's things when you even think about, like people using what this flushable wipes that clog up pipes, and we have to talk to them about like, hey guys, be mindful of that because we have to call a plumber, and then somebody needs to come in. That's exposing that plumber and an additional time that may not be necessary, right? So what are we, like, Ali, how are we responding to some of the resident situations we're seeing?
Sure. So I think when we think about that constituency, just like our teams, the most important thing is safety. So we physically are interacting with our residents, and we are responsible for their homes. So this is like safety is paramount. So what do we need to do from a safety perspective to make sure our residents are safe? So I think the first one is, we've closed our offices because we don't want people interacting a ton unnecessarily. So teaching our residents how to pay us electronically is a really great way to avoid personal interaction. So actually going into the crisis, we had 88% electronic payment rate. So we already are very much skewed to this, but there's those 12% who are, older people without access to computers, or just like they don't have a bank account, all sorts of reasons why they don't pay. So we've given some other options, including being able to pay over the phone. So that's an example of minimizing the interactions with our residents to keep them safe. We also are, obviously I talked about the payment programs and resources we can bring to help people pay rent that can't pay rent. Obviously there's an eviction moratorium that's been established in many parts of the country, but that doesn't mean that people won't have to pay rent. It just might mean that gets deferred for a while, or maybe there'll be some kind of rent relief that happens nationally. But then what happens to the owners? They'd have to also pay the owners too. So who knows what's going to happen there, but I think our best advice to our residents is let's not get you way behind. Even if you can't pay right now, let's pay something. Let's find some other ways to help you through whether it be grant funding or these government programs, and keep them current so that when the crisis is over, and it will end and we will all get back to our normal lives at some point. I know it doesn't feel like that right now, but I'm sure that'll happen, that they're not way behind in a bad spot. So that's something there we can do for our residents. And then, we've got to keep their homes safe. And, that's part of the, property managers are required by law to keep, the health and habitability of a property up to code. And so, and that means if it's a 1-bedroom or one bathroom apartment and the toilet's not working, we got to fix that toilet because people have to be able to go to the bathroom. And there's all sorts of things that fall into that category. So we've contacted all of our vendors. They are all working. If they're not working, they're letting us know. We also have our own service technicians, like I said before. So we've outfitted them with both the training and the materials to stay safe. But we've reduced the amount of occupied work orders that we will do, but we still have to make sure that we get anything around health and habitability done. So that's really important. And then also, and we've messaged that to our residents. And then for residents in multifamily buildings that have common areas, we're stepping up the cleaning and disinfecting of those common areas. So there's a laundry room, things like that, so that we can make sure that we try to keep things as clean as possible. So, on the resident side, I think I bucket in two things. One is their physical safety. And then two is how do we give them resources and help them to navigate a tricky financial situation if that should arise for them.
Yeah, and on the side of like the other constituency that Mynd is constantly engaged with is our prospects, or people who will do business with us or may do business with us or want to do business with us, both on the resident side, future residents, and on the owner side, future landlords who can manage properties for. And I think that's one of the things, like we've done that, Steve, like we went through every single, campaign or work stream related to marketing or advertising, and decided to look, like we pause this, we retool this, or we continue this. So for example, at Google AdWords, we continue going because people still need property management. But for Facebook, we're sort of retooling the Facebook ads to be more in tune with the current situation. And look, the whole situation room birth wasn't even in the furthest parts of our imagination 2 weeks ago. Like there was no need for anything like that. Now there's a need. So where can we dial things down so we can sort of instrument this new information system, in a way that is actually beneficial, usable, and it helps people. So that's what we're looking at. And on the prospect side, it's very hard. I mean, we're a large company, right? We have all kinds of messaging through all kinds of channels. And Ali, like I think you brought that up, like, or maybe it was Matt, some message on our chat, like our chat bot, not a bot, but our actual website chat said something like, hey, can we get the most out of your East Bay rental property? Well, in this day and time, well, actually, I see it show up here. It says, hi there. Are you looking to drive more value from your Sacramento real area rental property? So like, this is true. This is what we do in a normal time. This is not a normal time. And so our new message is, we're here for you. How can we help?
Well, I think when you get a company the size that we are, there's a very large train behind you. And so it's very hard to stop all the carts at one time, and so you may be stopping up front, but the back may still be moving at regular speed. And so I
feel
think
the push. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think anyone that has a business of scale, just like in the airline industry, someone may say, hey, this is great, let's do this. It may not get to everyone in the company for weeks, depending on technology and everything. And so I've actually got a question, Ali, regarding, I've got two questions for you. The first one is, if I do own rental properties, what should I be thinking about regarding, in your opinion, regarding tenant verification? And should I change my verifications of what I'm willing to accept and not accept in regards to the certain situation? So somebody today may have a job, but in 2 weeks, they may not have a job. So they may have paycheck stubs today. So legally, you have to accept them based on your qualifications of whatever city, state you're in. But they may be coming up on a furlough. I mean, I know Halliburton just laid off 3,500 people yesterday in Texas out of 6,000 total. So 50% of their workforce, they just slashed. As of Monday, they were all employed, very well paid. How does somebody handle that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And we've been having this task force meeting regularly, and that came up I think, it's a tough one. I don't know. It's a fast developing situation. I don't think that you can make any kind of policy changes right now and say, well, because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow or the next day. So I think we're going to make our use our best judgment. I think a lot of the first wave of people getting laid off is going to come from these shelter-in-place orders that are happening, and I think now there's 6 states that are under this order. The California governor did it last night, and now already there's 5 other states, or 5 or so states that have done it. So that directly hits the service economy.
Sure.
Restaurants, bars, and the like. So, that will come pretty quickly. We'll see. I think if people they won't 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now, you'll know. So this is, I think, a moment in time of where there's going to be a big first initial hit, but then, I don't know that anybody can predict what's going to happen in the economy going forward. I was on a call yesterday. The National Rental Home Council is an industry trade group we were a part of. They had a chief economist from, I believe it was CoreLogic on. He was predicting that this would be a recession, but not on the lines of the Great Recession. So, we all lived through that. That was 10 years ago, and we kind of know what that felt like. And so, he doesn't think it'll be as big, but who knows? Every day there's new information changing. So I would say I wouldn't make wholesale changes right now. The coming storm is April 1st rent payments. We don't know what's going to happen there. So we really focused on that. And on the safety, this whole thing is about social distancing, is around slowing the spread of the virus. So as being a good actor in society, we still have to perform our work as an essential service, but we're just trying to minimize any opportunity to have the virus be transmitted within our ecosystem. So that's, I think, the 2 things we're looking at, and then we'll see what happens from there.
Okay. One last question, and I'll let Alex kind of close it out. Based on everything that you've gone through, and again, people watching this are all different types. What resource, technology-wise, would you say has been your rock regarding this? What is your go-to going, this is that, man, I could not have done it without this?
Interesting. Yeah. I might be the wrong guy to ask, because I'm like a serial tech entrepreneur. So I live my life a certain way. So there's not any change really that I've done. So long ago I got rid of cable TV. It's all internet stuff here.
Right.
House. And so, as for Mind, we're on a total Google infrastructure. We use Google, we use Gmail, we have Google Hangouts, we have everything virtually that way. We use Slack as one of our main communication channels. So like I said, we were already kind of built to virtually. And so I think different for different pieces of the business. I know some people can't live without Slack. I'm a little bit of an older guy, I guess, now. So email is what I use and living by, and we're getting a ton done through that channel.
I guess maybe because we're remote, maybe Google Hangouts is reinforcing that you made the right decision because you're able to communicate with the teams, or maybe not something new, but something you're going, man, this really is helping. To me, Google Hangouts is something that's huge because you're able to get everyone virtually and, face to face kind of. So to me, it'd be Google Hangouts that I would say that's been a solid.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, I think we're leaning on that hard, and Zoom's stock has gone up a ton over the last week. So, they
deserve it.
Yeah. They're getting a lot of, they're in the right place at the right time. But yeah, this is amazing. Our ability to have substantive meetings, and yes, not as good as being live, but we can see each other, and we already had the norm in our company to keep your cameras on so that everybody can see. Sometimes people turn the camera off and try to hide in these calls, but we already kind of have this culture, and yeah, it's great. So we can still execute the business, and so yeah, it's been a great tool. Thank you, Google.
Yeah. So sometimes we take it for granted. This is my one of my best friends. He is in IT. He has his own consultancy, and and I can't talk to him. He's so busy right now. He's so phenomenally busy right now and making so much money. His company's never made anywhere near what he's making because everybody's scrambling to catch up with this remote, security. So we have to, by the way, Ali, we have to do a shout out to our IT team. The security blanket to put around Mind to keep us safe while we operate is I think we don't appreciate. Because my friend, instrumenting this for a lot of different companies right now, he can't talk. We can't do, we do virtual dinners now with friends. He can't even come. He's so busy. So very thankful for this. And I was just going to say, look, we're putting together the Situation Room. We're passionate about being of service to anyone within the rental housing community. We feel like we can impact that with good, solid information to do our best to do fact checking and deliver the news through this podcast. We're going to introduce potentially another podcast, another stream of more updated, more specific episodes. And want to say thank you very much, Ali. I know you had to yank an hour out of your day, but look, I think this goes to a good cause. Whoever's listening, I think there's a lot of nuggets of wisdom here that you gave away today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me, guys. Good luck, everybody. Stay positive.
Thank you. We'll see you all soon. Be well.
Bye-bye. Thanks, Ali. We'll see you guys.